What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today it is day 1 of 2 of this 3-round NFL mock draft. If you guys are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. You guys know how to use YouTube. This is split up into 2 days, just like the real NFL draft. Today is day 1. Tomorrow is rounds 2 and 3, just like the real thing. But yes, below my face on my board, below that, all the great ways to get involved in the community. Just go to that link tree. You're 2 clicks away from getting anywhere, including sponsor of the show, UnderDog Fantasy. You get up to $1,000 for free when you sign up using my code, which is just click the link. It makes it all easy for you. Sends me $60, full transparency. But I love the company. I use it on my own, and feel free to tag me whenever you guys make bets. Make sure to ask me what I think of it, because you can end up clowning me if I don't like it. So let's get in on this. Starting out with the number 1 overall selection, we have the New England Patriots, and the receiving core needs some juice. I mean, simply put, you could try to trade down and get him, but I just don't really think that's going to be feasible. I don't see any team or player worth moving up for that is outside the realm of Travis Hunter. So I think it's perfectly reasonable, unless there was a team that was desperate for a cornerback talent, which I don't see it, because I really do think Will Johnson is that special. But I think that let's save ourselves some time here and go Travis Hunter at number 1 overall. I do worry about that potentially being a little bit of an overlap with Pop Douglas, but I honestly think there is a world where a very, very, very high likelihood that Travis Hunter, Pop Douglas, and Javon Baker could be the 3 stars going forward. Jalen Polk's had a little bit of struggles. I wasn't a huge fan on him. I actually had Javon Baker above Jalen Polk. I know Javon's been doing a lot of special team work. I think he's going to take a massive role next year compared to what he's doing now. So I do have some faith in him in the future. And number 2 for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I know that's very easy to trade back. You get a good amount of draft capital, draft some offensive line. But I think that we are actually in a relatively good spot right now because we need to get a true boundary corner. Let's not F around. Let's not have to find out once again what happens when you neglect the secondary. The defense has not been up to par, and you need to be able to have sufficient defensive back help. And Will Johnson is the best player in the class. There's no one else that does it better than him. The only one that you can talk about is Travis Hunter, and Travis Hunter is a beast. We love Travis Hunter, but he is on the offensive side of the ball. Will Johnson will be on purely the defensive side of the ball. And if for a one-position player, I think Will Johnson is the best, hands down, in the class. Even with a knee injury, he still is unbelievably talented, unbelievably smart, and he's unbelievably fluid at an unbelievable frame. I love that to death. Will Johnson, going to be a fantastic addition in the NFL, regardless of which team he goes to. I picked number 3 for the New Orleans Saints. I think this is a prime position to potentially move back. We have a team right here in the Panthers that is lurking for a quarterback, and they have some additional draft capital now since the Cowboys have ended up trading for Jonathan Mingo. Yes, this is post-trade deadline. So I think with a plethora of teams right here from 4 to 7 all wanting a quarterback, I think it is the biggest bidder. And the biggest bidder, I believe, is going to be the New York Giants, who are relatively desperate for a top-tier quarterback. And I think that it is the smartest thing to be able to make a beautiful deal there with New York. So the Saints, you're going to be essentially being able to get the exact same player that I'd probably draft for you here at pick number 7. So we're simply playing with house money. And there's going to be a lot of teams offering 3rd-round picks. So you might see a second in here. I don't think the Saints are going to be, I mean, you look at their draft capital, they already have 2 3rd-round picks. I think New York needs to get this right. I think it's going to take that second round pick, and I think you might be able to squeeze out that 4th-round pick, that late 3rd potentially. You could even steal that pick they just got from Washington. And, you know, basically the Saints are going to flip this into making it a lot of draft capital, but we'll just leave it as the 4th for the time being. Feel free to be able, and yes, I did purposely adjust it for the trade for Marshawn Lattimore because PFF didn't do that. We love that, right? So let's get this trade on, pushing that through. And the New York Giants have jumped up to the number 3 overall pick to select Cam Ward. Now, if you guys do think that that trade was a little bit skewed towards giving New York the best deal, by all means, toss in future draft capital. It's not going to genuinely affect the mock draft because we know on day 2, there's so many players that I'd love to select. There is less trades that happen than maybe I'd want. But those picks that I would have traded for this number 3 spot, maybe it would be a future 4, maybe it would be a future 3 on top of that. That necessarily wouldn't factor in the same way that it will on the next day, because trading like an earlier day 3 pick on day 2 for next year, not necessarily the best strategy in my opinion, but I digress. Leave the Panthers here at number 4 overall. And there's a couple routes you can go here. You can go the Shedeur Sanders route. And if you guys have now seen my brand new quarterback video that is over an hour long, I read a scouting report per quarterback as well. You guys will end up being able to see exactly what I think of the quarterback class. I ended up shifting up my grading system a little bit just to be able to account properly, because I think I was misproperly weighting certain categories, because I have a numerical scale. That's what my board is based off of. I thought I was misweighting certain categories and actually using a little bit too much subjectivity in terms of playmaking. I like the way that I ended up describing how I split up playmaking into a far more objective and calculated category. So keep that in mind as well. I think that it's honestly definitely worth a listen, because it takes a lot of time. You guys know I'm still recovering from a concussion. I know, like, how long is this shit gonna take? But trust me, I want it gone as much as you guys do. I don't like looking like Harry Potter on the film. But jokes aside, I'd put a lot of effort into that. Would love for you guys to check it out. It's a certainly unique ranking, but I also do think that you guys will end up appreciating it, because at least I tried to justify it, and it has clips to back it up on my Twitter page. So again, feel free to check that out. I digress though. Shedeur Sanders is my quarterback 1. Spoiler alert for that video. Cam Ward is my QB2, but Cam Ward has a far higher ceiling. I think New York, especially with the talent they have, would be a better location for Cam. Shedeur Sanders could work well here in Carolina. That being said, I think there's a lot more high-value positions that would have a higher return. I know in round number 2, there are a lot of prospects that I think, and especially given the fact that we have an extra 4th-round pick, we could potentially trade up to the end of the 1st to be able to get our guy. This is going to be ludicrous, and I know I'm going to get ripped a new asshole for doing this. Sorry for the language. I am going to get a little bit crazy here. I think that Carolina is going to pass on a QB. But not only are they going to pass on a QB, they're going to be trading back. They ended up losing a lot of draft capital by trading up. They're going to do the exact opposite, because the Browns are lurking for a quarterback there. And again, I'm going to get ripped a new one for this. This is why we do a mock draft every week. I'm deep down shivering me timbers, so to speak. I think we're going to be trading with the Carolina Panthers and the Raiders. But here's the thing. I'm not going to have the Raiders end up losing their 2nd round pick. I'm going to have them trading back in the 2nd round. This is not only the trade, do not worry, but I do think it's very crucial for the Panthers to get closer to the end of the 1st for that jump for that quarterback, right? I do think that's going to be very valuable. And I think because of the quantity of picks that Carolina does have, you are going to be in a prime position to be able to poach future draft capital. So I think maybe you could end up doing a couple of moves right here. We've seen it quite often in the past where teams basically shuffle their draft boards and be able to move up and down. Again, feel free to calculate this at your own risk of sanity. But again, you could take away future pick if you want. Like, I assume this would be relatively enough. We'll see. But again, it's not going to really affect the mock draft, so you do your own calculations. The Vegas Raiders jump the Cleveland Browns, and again, for a pretty low price, right? We end up giving that early 4th round pick, but we also just move back in the 2nd to end up selecting Shedeur Sanders. Shedeur has that connection with Tom Brady. I think that, what the Raiders need is consistency. They need someone with a high floor, but also who can make plays. And that's kind of what you're going for with Gardner Minshew, and Gardner just doesn't beat that threshold. I think Shedeur Sanders is a tier above Gardner Minshew, and that to me equates to several wins, because you have a dominant defensive coach with a defensive mind, with defensive pieces that are still developing, and you have a quarterback that can raise the threshold enough to where you can end up really stacking some wins. I have a lot of faith in this. Again, now you've actually not really lost draft capital. All you do is just reshift your board. And I think that gives the massive middle finger to the Cleveland Browns there at pick 5. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a good thing in the NFL for teams to feel comfortable getting their guy, but also not screwing themselves over. It's mutually beneficial for both teams. Carolina is now in a good striking position for a late 1st quarterback, because there's a lot bigger needs with a lot better value for a team like the Panthers, in my opinion. For the Browns, I ended up doing this yesterday, and I know it's going to irk some people off. Who are you going to take in the quarterback room? I love Drew Allar. I do. I still don't think that you take Drew Lock at pick 5. I think that's a disservice to Drew. And I think it's a disservice to the Browns fans because you're not going to see Drew at starting capacity and that a number 5 pick will be forced into doing just yet. This team has an identity, and it's worked very well. Since Nick Chubb came in, you had Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt. Your team has an identity of dominance in the run game, and I don't think you should let that fly. Or I don't think you should let that go. And Ashton Jeanty is going to be the pick. And you guys are going to lose your minds. I get it. It's a deep running back class. There's a lot of dudes. You can end up getting really good value down the line. I get it. But you also have to factor in that every time we've had these running backs that are looked at as a top tier back coming into the NFL, which I really do believe Ashton Jeanty is, even in my numerical scale where I knock running back several points. His grade right now is a 79.5. That's my board score. His actual score, I think, is in like the 82 to 83 range. I knock their scores down because of positional value, right? Even with that, he is still a top 10 player on my board. And you look at how the NFL has evaluated running backs on the tier or even a tier below Ashton Jeanty. Saquon Barkley, some apparently Jahmyr Gibbs, Bijan Robinson. All of them go or are supposed to go in the top 10. At least in the top 12, because, technically Jahmyr ended up being traded back for, but the Lions genuinely thought they would take him at 6. You cannot say that Ashton Jeanty can't be taken at 5. Logically speaking, there is no argument from the past, from what the NFL does, that Ashton Jeanty will not be a top 10 pick. And especially for the Browns that have that identity, that lost the opportunity to get the quarterbacks, you might say left tackle, and I think that's perfectly fine. But I do think that we have to evaluate how much value Ashton Jeanty can bring to a team whose identity has been so focused on the run and the defense. Ashton Jeanty is going to be an absolute baller for the Browns. And then again, there are multiple quarterbacks in this class that are developmental, that do have a lot of talent. Again, check out that 1-hour quarterback video and just see for yourself. There's a lot of opportunities for this team to be able to salvage really good value down the board. The Panthers, we ended up, again, acquiring that 4th round pick. Was essentially we sacrificed a 5th rounder to move up into the 4th and got another 4th too, technically, from Dallas. And then we ended up moving up in the 2nd. I think that's beautiful. It's great for the team. It's great for both of these franchises. So at number 6 overall, I'm rushing to the podium with this. A lot of people actually brought up Mason Graham, and that's really intriguing, but I don't think I can pass up on Abdul Carter. You trade back, you get great draft compensation, and then you still get your guy. That's exactly what I'm going to do right here for the New Orleans Saints as well. However, let's just talk about that in a second. I think Abdul Carter is special. I think he has just... I didn't have a ton of faith in him. I'm just going to be real. I thought he was a pretty mediocre to garbage linebacker at the NFL level. And then he ended up going as a pass rusher. I had him as, I think, my edge 9 coming into the year, which is higher than a lot of people I know that don't necessarily pull projection out of their ass. I mean, simply put, Abdul was so raw. It's like, man, this guy will be maybe a 2026 first-round pick. This dude just took off this year. Don't know how it's happened to that degree, but it's fantastic, and I'm so happy for him. He's done such an amazing job, and I'll be the first to come out and say, I think he deserves all the credit in the world for that. Abdul Carter is a fantastic player. The fact that you get to add draft compensation as well, or draft value as well as still get your guy, is absolutely amazing for team compensation down the line. Pick number 7 for the New Orleans Saints. So there's 3 routes that I wanted to go here. That's why I felt comfortable trading back. I theoretically feel comfortable trading back again. You look at the compensation that they already have. We technically could even still move up in another period of the draft. But you got Tetairoa McMillan here. I see teams like the Titans I absolutely think Tetairoa McMillan would be a sniper shot for, and I think that's great. I think that at the same time, there's also a lot of wide receivers in this class where if you were to miss out on T-Mac, you still could get guys like Eli Iomaner. You could end up talking about Jaden Higgins. Like, there's a lot of really good targets at your disposal. I do think that offensive line is one of the most underrated positions that is on the board. And I think that the Dolphins would be sniping Will Campbell if he slips to that spot. I think the Titans will be sniping Will Campbell if he goes to that spot. So I know that there is a demand for offensive line. I know that your right tackle situation is no bueno. Granted, you could put Tolley there, but if Tolley's doing well at left tackle, don't change something that's already working. right? Don't fix something that ain't broken. So I really do like the idea of Will Campbell here because worst case scenario, let's just say the arms are too short to play in the NFL. I don't think so because tackles have done it before and they do perfectly fine. Pretty sure Penny Sewell is sub 33, right? Like there are really solid tackles that just have shorter arms. You can make it work. Let's just say Will Campbell can't though. Let's roll the dice on that. He's still going to kick to the inside and be possibly an all-pro level guard. I'm pretty damn confident that a legitimate blue chip tackle, if forced to the inside, can be on that level because the talent's all there. The fact that they can handle being a high tier tackle to me means that they should be able to at least have some comfortability on the inside as well. And Will Campbell's not known to be the most hyper athletic tackle on planet Earth, so it's not like you're talking about Charles Grant, who's going to be a freak of nature that now is going to be pigeonholed in a small role. So you can't go wrong. You got Will Campbell, you got Mason Graham, you got T-Mac. And you got Nick Scorton as well. I think that he needs to be tossed in this equation as well. So you're in a good spot. I think that in the second round, I trust defensive interior value. I don't necessarily trust tackle value, but if you do want to address just interior offensive line, I think I would be willing to trust that as well. What I won't trust is that you can get a player like T-Mac. Like, I do want to emphasize Will Campbell. I do love him to death. You're going to get an instant hit, but I don't think I can say no to T-Mac. At pick number 8 for the Miami Dolphins, I got Mason Graham here. I know the Jets would be lurking for Mason Graham. I'm not going to overthink it. Let's get the guy. I know offensive line's key, but this organization has proven time and time again not to value offensive line. At pick number 9 for the Tennessee Titans, would have loved to get T-Mac, but we're in this situation. Wide receiver is still pertinent, but I don't see the return on investment for wide receiver. We look at how our board's shaping up, and we have 2 4th-round picks. That's beautiful. Can we trade back? That's the real question. Can we trade back to end up selecting another position? I don't think you're getting remotely the value that you get for Will Campbell here. I know it's going to irritate people. I know. And you might say, oh, well, you can get quarterback. You can go Jalen Milroe. I don't think Jalen Milroe is remotely ready to be an NFL quarterback. I don't think Garrett Nussmeier is right now ready to be an NFL quarterback. These guys need to build consistency. Miller Moss is going to be returning to school, especially in this. He got benched. Drew Allar, I love him to death. Don't think he's going in the top 10. And he has I think the same QB coach as Will Levis. So, there's just certain aspects or certain layers that I don't really think are going to be beneficial to the Titans. So, looking at the Jets here, I think that they're in a uniquely particular situation that doesn't threaten many teams that would want to try to jump above them. Therefore, there's no buyers. So the Titans can't be a seller of their pick. Let's go best player available. The right side of the offensive line still is not good. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that. And if you're sitting at pick 9, as much as you want to trade back, if there's not somebody who's willing to buy, you can't sell. So make the most of your draft position. Get the best offensive lineman in the class, Will Campbell. At pick 10 for the New York Jets, a lot of really good choices here. Really good choices. And the one that I continue going back to is Malachi Starks. Just this, you need to get multiple defensive backs, including corners. But I think Malachi Starks is special. I really do. His poorly graded games are where he allows 2 receptions, one big reception. That's doable, man. I mean, this guy's every single week being one of the best defensive backs, and this is the team that drafted Jamal Adams. Excuse me, I'm choking on air in the top 10. So I thoroughly believe that Malachi Starks really is a difference maker. He's the type of guy that I want on my team, and just sometimes getting good contributors, even if Aaron doesn't love that, is going to be such a big payoff. At pick number 11 for the Dallas Cowboys, hello. Again, this is another position where you could trade back. I'm looking heavily at that receiving room here and looking at what the Colts would take. Are there any teams that are desperate for a corner? I don't think so. Therefore, I don't see any teams getting aggressive over the Colts. And you could talk about the Niners trying to jump the Seahawks and the Rams for a tackle, but I think that's going to be an issue for the next pick. I don't think that people are going to want to continue paying a high price. Jerry's going to be calling. People aren't going to be picking up. That's just the God honest truth. So I think you got to salvage your situation here. And I'm still looking at the receiving room because you got Mango there. Technically, you got Tolbert Flournoy as well, but no one is on the tier of Isaiah Bond. I will say, though, because you spent a 4th-round pick on a guy, you better have a fucking vision for him. If he's going to be your wide receiver 4 and you spent that pick on him, I will personally go and attack you. Like, Jerry, technically everyone knows where he lives. It's at the corner of, what is that, like Oaklawn and something else. Like, we will go to his house. Like, all you Cowboys fans, come with me. We will go and we will riot. To be fair though, I think that we could sell this pick at a relatively discounted rate. I will say though, the Bengals are kind of lurking for Kenneth Grant. I know it scares the shit out of you. A big athletic defensive tackle from Michigan. But at the same time, you got to take it in a particular context that Kenneth Grant is a fantastic player who is not Mozzie Smith. I will admit, a lot of the positives are very similar to Mozzie, but I think the problem with Mozzie off the bat was that you made him shift his body type. That's not right. Let Kenneth Grant act with Mozzie Smith as one of the two best defensive interior duos in the NFL because of that unmatched athleticism and size combination. Just don't overthink it. Get a quality defensive interior player here who has a ton of upside that also has a great motor. I don't remember what Mozzie's motor was like, if I'm going to be completely blunt, but I know for a fact Kenneth Grant is that guy every single play. I see him full of energy. He is infectious in the best way possible. He has an infectious personality that I love. It's contagious. I love it. Pick number 12, though, for the Indianapolis Colts. I'm trading back here. I could have done it with the Cowboys, but I'm still going to be doing it here with the Colts because I know Kenneth Grant would have been my pick for the Bengals at 13. Hate to break it to you, but I'm going to be trading back here, and I see the Niners. I think the Niners need to get aggressive because you have two teams in your division looking for tackles, so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Giving the massive middle finger there to the Seahawks and the Rams. Technically, the Rams and Seahawks could move up as well, but I just don't see I don't see any picks that are necessarily awe-inspiring for the Colts at this point. So, especially within the next couple picks, I don't really think you're going to be missing out on too much. So, I do think this is the opportunity for, I think a third-round pick is relatively commensurate of the value that you have to move up. Maybe you toss in like a 248 as well. Feel free to do the combination, the future picks as well. I'm not going to be doing that for this trade, but I know that 17 to 15 is pick 120. So like maybe you toss in 191 instead to be able to balance out that value. Regardless, not going to affect really the mock draft unless it really comes down to it, which then you can yell at me then. But I'm looking at Kelvin Banks here, and it's pretty obvious. If you can get Kelvin Banks at pick number 12, you jump up and you take him. Pick number 13 for the Cincinnati Bengals, another team I could easily see moving back. I do love Nick Scorton to the squad, but I don't really see them at this moment really punching the ticket on a pick right now. I honestly love the idea of the Rams jumping an in-division rival as well. I think the NFC West needs to get aggressive here because the offensive tackles really do matter that much. And Josh Simmons is a guy who I love for the Rams. I do. But there's just a difference when you get Josh Simmons versus Arianti Ursary, and Ursary really can bring just a new level of physicality to the table that you're not really expecting. I also could see the Bengals getting excited with the Bears that are lurking here. The Bears could jump up and end up getting a quality offensive tackle. You got multiple second-round picks that you end up flipping for one of them being a third round. You know what? I love it. Let's do it. We're getting trade happy. Let's just have fun. That's the whole entire point of this. We're having a good time. So I'm going to be moving up with the Bears. I think 36 to 45 is a relatively big jump to decrease the value. And because of that, I think I maybe toss in a future fourth rounder in here. But the Bengals get to move up to the end of the first round, or the beginning of the second round, and they still end up getting future draft capital from the Bears. Again, you could feel free to toss in some other stuff if you like. I think this is going to be perfectly fine in terms of the value. You could end up technically being the Bears and doing 50 for 77. Could do that. That might not be a bad idea because then the Bengals move up into the second round. I think that's actually more respectable. That's more respectable than, I don't think the Bengals are that desperate to move up to that degree. I think they get a lot more value having two middle of the second picks. So we're going to be doing that right there. The Bears have officially moved up and they're selecting an offensive lineman here in Arianti Ursary who can play guard or tackle depending on his level of adequacy at those positions. Pick number 14 for the Seattle Seahawks, giving the Rams a big FU because they are going to be looking at offensive tackle here. And Cam Williams is great for the development of the system. He's a right tackle, but nah. I think I'd rather give the biggest middle finger to the Rams and select a player, granted, coming off a season-ending injury, but he was the best tackle in the class. I want to change my pickup for the Rams as well, so this is going to be a great opportunity to test it out. We have a quick little run on tackles if you cannot see. At pick number 15 for the Los Angeles Rams, I think corner is going to be the right route to go. Benjamin Morrison is not going to be coming out in this mock draft either because he is a true junior and he ended up having a season-ending injury. I just don't see the value of that for him. I think the Rams are going to love the idea of Davison Igbinosun. Davison Igbinosun has been the best corner on Ohio State, and he was the best corner last year as well. That's a hot take, but I think I'm going to be willing to stick to it. I'm annoyed that PFF doesn't have a placeholder for him. However, after his most recent performance of a 90 defensive grade, he just needs to learn how to be a little bit more tactical with how physical he is, because he's almost to a detriment physical. But I think that if you can fine-tune it, you might have one of the best corners in the entire NFL. So it's not Jordan Hancock. It is my number 18 player on my board, Davison Igbinosun. At pick 16 for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You guys are in a good spot, man. You guys are in a great spot right here because I'm going to be rushing to the podium with an amazing player in James Pierce, my number 2 player in the class. Simply put, it's just there's not many teams that are looking for a pure edge rusher at this point. I think Abdul Carter and James Pierce are the 2 best in the class, so don't really overthink it, but perfect replacement for Joe Tryon-Shoyinka. At pick number 17 for the Indianapolis Colts, we ended up moving back, and this is the proper opportunity to go after corner again. Ben Morrison not coming out in this. I'm going to be going after another one of my guys. That's Azariah Thomas, my number 12 player in the class. He's a little bit more raw than Igbinosun because, well, this is his first year starting. Granted, he had 500 reps, over 500 last year, so he has experience, just not necessarily pure starting experience until this year, where he's been doing a great job. Ventral Cypress is going to be my placeholder value for him, but he's my number 12 player in the class. He's starting to pop up in first-round mocks. You guys know this has been a my guy. I don't know, corners just seem to be something that I really do love, especially when it comes to finding value, and it looks like people are catching on. So super excited about that. 6'2", 198 pounds, and you are not beating this guy deep. He flies. His top speed is incredible. It's perfect for the Colts organization. At pick number 18, we're back with the Bengals, and I'm looking at this point, great value everywhere. I don't think this team can technically pass on Nick Scorton at this point. You know, just being able to get a quality edge rusher 3 on your squad that is just perfectly built for your system, it works. But I do think defensive interior is a bigger needed position. BJ Hill, I think, is up for a contract this year. So I think this is the perfect opportunity to look at someone like Walter Nolan, or you can end up trying to push guys like Deion Walker and Tyleik Williams into this range. Walter Nolan's red hot right now. Like, he really is just doing a fantastic job all around, and I want to give him the credit he deserves. So we're going to go after defensive interior in the first or the second, but I'm trying to be a little bit more pushy on my defensive interior value, and so we're going to be seeing them going a little bit higher. I don't trust one would be there at 45 or 50. At pick number 19 for the Denver Broncos, I feel very comfortable with Luther Burden at this point. Let's evaluate the other options. I think also, though, tight end is a big position. Big position for this team. When they're trying to get rid of Greg Dulcich, I could easily see that being a day 3 pick that ends up being traded during the draft for a team. Let's just say the Eagles don't get a tight end in this draft. They very easily could be like, well, we want to try out Greg Dulcich. He hasn't been super healthy, but he's also somebody that has a ton of talent, former 3rd round pick. So because we know he's on the table, I think it's very possible that Tyler Warren is the selection here. He's 260 pounds, a great blocker, but he's also the focal point of Penn State's receiving core. And I think that that very well balances out to be one of the best options in this draft. There are 3 tight ends I trust in this draft. It's Fannin, Warren, and Loveland. There's a couple other guys I like, but like Brenningstool, but there's nothing that comes close to these top 3, in my opinion. So Tyler Warren's going to be the first tight end selected. Again, different frame than Colson Loveland, who's doing a fantastic job. No disrespect to Loveland, but Warren is that pure tight end at 260 pounds that is completely well-rounded. And I think Sean Payton really does appreciate it. Also, he's a former quarterback. So you already know that there's going to be some love there as well. The trickeration going to be sending Sean back to his days in New Orleans. So Taysom Hill vibes right there. Pick number 20 for the Arizona Cardinals. A lot of good options here. A lot of really good options. But you guys know me. At pick 20 I'm rushing to the podium for Jalen Walker here. He fits the system to a T. You guys ended up bringing on, who was that you guys just traded for? Baron Browning. And this is literally a better version of Baron Browning. So keep that in mind. You end up trading relatively cheap draft capital for him. And I think that this is going to just be unbelievable value. You guys said you needed it, showed you needed it. Now get what you need. Pick number 21 for the Los Angeles Chargers. I do think that you're starting to see the value of the receiver slip here. We could see a move up, but again, there's top 3 tight ends in this class. Harbaugh loves his tight ends as well, and then you have that perfect connection. You can't say no to that. You can't. It's too good of a story to let slip. Then we have the Falcons here. The Falcons, I would love to trade back. However, I see that there are plenty of teams. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 teams and the rest of the round that are looking for edge rusher. 6, if that value is correct. So I don't think I can pass up on one here. Nick Scorton's unreal value. I don't think Mikael Williams will be able to beat out Nick Scorton at this point. I just don't. So we're going to be going after Nick Scorton. Don't overthink it. He's a fantastic edge rusher. Just 285 is a little bit tough to place in a particular system. But I do think that of all people, if Raheem Morris is still there, which I assume he will be, he's doing a fantastic job right now. I just think that, the higher organization hasn't been doing a great job in terms of asset management. I digress. Nick Scorton is going to be a great pickup, and he will be able to be utilized properly in that defense. Pick 23 for the Packers, traded away Preston Smith. You guys have a wide open lane for a developmental edge rusher. That's going to leave Mikael Williams on the table. You guys like taking Georgia edge rushers or Georgia defenders in the first. I'm almost pretty much you got Stokes, and then you also have your linebacker, Quay Walker. So we're going to continue that trend with Mikael Williams joining the fray. Pick number 14 for the Baltimore Ravens. I actually might skip wide receiver and go for the edge rusher here. You ended up acquiring Deontay Johnson, which is why I love Luther Burden to the squad. But when you got LT Overton on the board, we got JT Tuimoloau. This team needs a dominant edge rusher, and LT has flourished since he has left Texas A&M, and he's just so damn dominant. I really do love LT Overton. I think he gets so much disrespect from people who don't like him because he's just a bigger player. And to be fair, I'm a bigger critic of LT because I'm like, some people think he's a top 10 guy. I'm a little bit more reserved for the late first territory for his value of the position, but I still think LT Overton's a fantastic player, and I think he deserves a lot of respect, especially in the correct system, which I think the Ravens are pretty desperate for someone to really work, and I think LT Overton absolutely will. At pick 25 for the Houston Texans, you guys know guard's the way to roll, right? But I don't see many teams apart from the Raiders. Why did I look at the Minnesota Vikings and look at them as the Raiders? But I don't see anybody but I almost call them the Raiders again, the Vikings, as a potential candidate for going after a guard. I think this is the perfect opportunity to trade back. You could go Cam Williams here, kick him to guard, and then have a really, really good time. But I don't really see the value in that. Honestly, what I could see the value in, come on, scroll. What the hell, PFF? Oh my Lord. I'm trying to have it where you can see Kansas City and Houston in the same thing. Kansas City's looking for an offensive tackle. Cam Williams might be the guy to develop for that. I really do like the idea of going up and selecting your guy, and you're jumping the Eagles as well. That could be very valuable. That could be a very valuable pick. And looking at some teams, I'll be looking at offensive tackle. You could go. I think the Saints, didn't we draft Will Campbell for the Saints? I think that'd be smart. Oh, we drafted T-Mac. So the Saints could be in the market, right? We ended up trading back, and we have a ton of draft capital. This would be a smart idea. The Saints are looking for a future at right tackle. He's big. He's Mauler. That's the type of opportunity that you can definitely jump on with those picks. And you've already addressed receiver. I know edge is also a thing, but let's look at the value of the New Orleans Saints picks. Look at that. That's a lot. That is a lot. To jump from 35 to 25, I think it will easily take an early third. I easily think that 67 would be a part of this deal. But you could get a little sexy here and pretty much end up moving up multiple times. Maybe you end up tossing in something else as well. Looking at where the gaps are, damn, good job on Houston. There's not really many gaps that they have, but I think that this should be relatively commensurate. feel free to toss in future capital as well. But you're getting an early 3rd round pick to be able to move up. That is 10 spots, though. That is 10 spots. That's tough. I actually think that we might have to move back a little bit in order to get this done. You're sending pretty much, you're moving up 10 spots. You're moving back. Ooh, that's a lot. So we're actually going we're going a little crazy here. We're going a little crazy today. But I do think that a full reshift is perfectly reasonable. I mean, teams, again, do this quite often. They end up moving their pieces around. So, again, we're going to have like a full reshift here. We're moving up 10 spots here. We're moving down essentially 20 spots here. And then technically, yeah, we would end up, moving down another, was that close to 20 spots, 22 spots right there. I think that's fine. I think this is perfect for the Saints as well. The Saints and the Texans then end up pretty much flip-flopping. The Texans move up twice to move back once, and the Saints move up a big amount of room to be able to select their future at right tackle, because I think that's been an issue that we've been trying to solve for a long time. So we built through the trenches. We have our future at right tackle, future at left tackle, and then we also have our star receiver, giving the Eagles a massive middle finger as well, which some people love to do. I just personally think that the Saints, with that amount of draft capital, should be making those moves. And I think for the Texans, just getting great value like that, because we're still going to probably get someone who is equal, if not better, value-wise to what we'd get at 25, it is worth it. So for the Eagles, I think there's 3 positions to address. There's tight end, there's edge rusher, and there's tight end, and there's tight end again. And then there's offensive tackle. Tackle, we've taken the last guy I'd take. We have. So it's really Cam Williams that would have been my pick there. So we're now looking at the edge rusher and the tight end room. The tight end room, I don't think a 3rd tight end is going to go in the 1st. I think at this point, you try to snipe some value down the board, right? So we're going to try to end up replacing what we have there in Josh Sweat. And I think Kamen Rucker might be the guy for that. He's 265 pounds, 6'2". And he is one of the most dominant players when healthy. He wasn't healthy this year until most recently. And, I mean, imagine coming off an injury. You have a sucky first week, and then you end up being the most dominant player, arguably, in college 2 weeks in a row. Like, that is an absolute baller. And I've been trying to find a way to get Kamen Rucker up more. He's someone who can play both standing up as well as his hand in the dirt. And I think Vic Fangio is going to love that. We're going to push Kamen Rucker into the 1st. I think he deserves it. And now I can't really complain about, where we're at in terms of Carolina wanting to move up and select their guy in Kamen Rucker, have another hometown hero because, well, we got Abdul Carter. So I'm happy about that. But I digress. Steelers at pick 27. You guys know where I want to go. You guys know. But I think Isaiah Bond is perfectly fine at this point. Mike Williams is not Isaiah Bond type of body, which, again, I think the Steelers doing their thing, which I already did actually account for trading away that 5th round pick. Oh, we overpaid. But Mike Williams, don't think he's going to be a massive contributor on this team. I think it's more of like a patch job to see if we can really make a push this year. Same thing with Preston Smith. So I think Isaiah Bond is going to be that future on the boundary that you're looking for. He is a boundary receiver. I love that about him. I don't think you need to take a wide receiver in the 1st necessarily, because this team has been great at finding them down the board. There's a lot of really good ones, but I want to keep things fresh. And we saw some really good players slip. Luther Burden, I think, is pretty much slot only. We have multiple slot weapons. Isaiah Bond is a true boundary receiver, and I'm going to show him the respect he deserves. Pick number 28 for the Minnesota Vikings. To me, it's corner as well as guard. I know that you guys have been complaining about the interior of the offensive line. It's been cheeks, but this is also a great opportunity to trade back. I mean, look at that. That's disgusting. Absolutely disgusting. And I have 2 teams that I want to trade up with here. I have the Browns, and then I also have the Panthers. The Panthers moved up because they still need a quarterback. They still do. They need somebody to work with for the future. And there are 2 teams that end up getting shellacked in that 4 group, and they're sitting right here. We have both the Browns as well as the Panthers. And the Panthers, if you guys remember, we ended up doing a very good job stacking these picks, and Minnesota needs quantity of picks. So both of these teams are perfect for moving around with the Vikings. I mean, both these, look at this. Both of them have pretty much 2 stacks of picks. I do think Carolina's pick stack is better. So we're going to be doing that. But I also think Carolina needs to get more aggressive and develop a quarterback over a period of time. So looking at the best way to get that return on investment, you could talk about pick number 68, but I'd have to get 97 in return. I'd have to. I'm not allowing Carolina to have only 2 picks this mock draft. Hate to say it. So for that, I think that it's fair for us to try to toss in some extra draft capital like 178 to make up for that difference. Again, feel free to do your own calculations. I know technically Minnesota could be like, I mean, we could end up simply just giving like 105 and, 218 here to bolster Minnesota. I think that's fair. That's fair. So Minnesota ends up being able to get like some really real quality value here. Like maybe they end up actually getting like 147 instead. We'll do that. How about that? So pretty much Jonathan Mingo allows them to move up here to select their quarterback of the future. And you guys are going to hate it. I already know. But Drew Allar is my next quarterback. And he needs a little bit of time to develop. This is perfect because you say, hey, they're not going to trade Bryce. They're not going to trade him at the deadline. They still need a quarterback to function. And yes, Andy Dalton could do that. But I don't think that if you guys are sitting at pick 4, you're going to be fully sold on Bryce. You have a whole new regime. You have a head coach that has proven to develop multiple quarterbacks. And if you can develop Geno Smith as well as Baker Mayfield back to legitimate star quarterback level, you can do it with Drew Allar, who's been doing that since he's pretty much like 12 years old. There's videos of him in middle school all the way up to now, continuing to work on his throwing motion. He's gotten exponentially closer to an NFL quarterback in terms of precision year after year after year, and it's literally just only going up. Drew Allar has done such a fantastic job. I want him for my Steelers, but I wanted to also change the narrative a little bit. At 29 for the Washington Commanders, I might just have to go after Luther Burden here. I want to go after edge really badly, but sometimes you just got to go best player available, and getting a very dynamic weapon who's young, who is also like just great after the catch, I don't think you can say no. At pick number 30 for the Buffalo Bills, again, Ben Morrison's going to be staying in this one. Also, by the way, I did realize I ended up shifting the picks around so you guys do have proper compensation from both Philadelphia and then traded it to New Orleans. I'm not going to let PFF fuck me over like that again. But regardless, at pick number 30 for the Buffalo Bills, there's a couple routes you can go. They do have a desire for defensive interior. They just ended up signing, I think, Quentin Jefferson, who ended up being released. So there is definitely some form of communication of a need there. That doesn't mean they're going to draft said need, but it certainly wouldn't be a horrible idea. Now, I do like the idea of Emeka Egbuka. However, I think he's pretty much a slot receiver. That's where he's proven to be most valuable because that's where he's played the past couple years, right? He's primarily a slot guy. So I think there's going to be a little bit of confusion as to whether Emeka Egbuka is going to be a boundary or not. I think he is worthy of trying, but that's not what you try in the first round. I think this team needs an edge rusher for the future, and there's quality edge rushers everywhere. And I think that the right guy to go after is JT Tuimoloau here. Like, first off, I think JT is the most disrespected edge rusher in the country right now. Just nobody really gives this dude the kudos he deserves. And he's been going up against star left tackles. We look at Jack Sawyer's pass rush win rate and like, wow, that's much better. Like, it's almost 5% better than JT's, right? It's technically 4.3, but you get the gist. The thing is, JT's pretty much always going against the left tackle, the most prized position on the offensive line, versus Jack Sawyer. And this is not a Jack Sawyer dig. This is more so boosting JT Tuimoloau. Like, you got to look at the edge rushers that are facing the left tackles versus the right. Now, sometimes, very rarely, you'll end up seeing that the right tackle is far better than the left, which then, yes, you can talk about that. But when you're going up against Josh Connerly versus Ajani Cornelius, I think that there's a big difference there. So we are going to be going after JT Tuimoloau here. Even though the statistics say that one is better than the other, the eye test will clearly show you that JT is the superior prospect. At pick number 31 for the Detroit Lions, ended up getting Zadarius Smith via trade. I'm forgetting what the compensation is for that. I did not include it in this, but I don't think that's going to really magically shift something that could happen down the line. I'm still going to be looking for a long-term edge rusher because I think that's fair. And looking at someone like Kyle Kennard, who this dude's just an absolute freak show. I really love Kyle Kennard, man. And, coming back for that Alabama game in Ole Miss, he was recovering from an injury, and you could see a massive dip in terms of his explosiveness, but he's still able to make it work. And his worst graded game, LSU, was someone I'm like, that is an absolute baller right there. So I really think he deserves at least consideration here. But if you're looking at the body types, I really think, I mean, technically Princely is the exact same size, but he plays much larger. You got to look at the size that these players play at. Shedeur Stewart's not a bad choice. I'll leave it there. You're pretty much blessed in terms of the quantity of players that you can get here. You could trade back because I don't see many teams going after edge in the next few picks. And like, are there any players that you can't miss out on? Wyatt Milam's a good choice. And technically, Wyatt Milam would be a good Detroit Lion. But I don't really see anybody like overwhelmingly talented to the point where it's like a guarantee. So I think this is going to be just perfectly fine. Stick and pick. Let's get a real quality player. And I think if you can get Zadarius Smith to stay, Shedeur Stewart is going to be your best return on investment. He's the freakiest athlete I've ever seen at 290 pounds. And I think he will be that late first flyer that a team like the Lions, who know how to develop and really elevate defensive talents, will really fall in love with him, and they can really make it work. I'm going to let Shedeur Stewart be the star of Detroit this time. And at pick 32, and ending off this video, we have the Kansas City Chiefs, which I think that defensive interior with Deion Walker could be really fun. I don't think it's like the biggest need on the team. I really do focus on that offensive line. And I think Jack Nelson, Josh Connerly need to be in consideration here. Josh Connerly is a super stud that's just needing a bit more polish. I will say, I have not seen the developmental side from Kansas City on their offensive tackles. Have not seen the guys really develop. And I think Josh Connerly is a little too inconsistent for me to really be fully sold on him being a good Chief. I think you want someone who's a little bit higher floor like Jack Nelson if you're going to be going after offensive tackle. But honestly, if you can spend money in free agency, I think that would be the far better route. I'm actually going to go a little crazy here. I'm going to go crazy. We're going to go a third tight end in the first round. Harold Fannin has just been unstoppable. He has over 1,000 yards already. He has over 1,000 yards. Ridiculous. This guy has been every single, like, look at this, 14.2 yards per reception back-to-back years. And this guy is literally the focal point of their entire offense. Like, they don't go to anybody else but him. So it's just been ridiculously consistent for Harold Fannin. Even against top-tier players, or top-tier defenses like Penn State, he still had over 100 yards. And it's just, that's a guy you roll the dice on, man. That is. And I really wanted to get Harold Fannin selected because there is such a big drop-off that it makes sense to go after Harold. Maybe you could have traded back, but get that fifth-year contract. He and Noah Gray can grow up to be an elite tight end duo. I'd be excited for it. Travis Kelce most likely retiring if he gets another Super Bowl. So that's going to be the video. Check out tomorrow for rounds 2 and 3. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.